All right, there we go. So recording has started. Let me share my screen. And for anyone who was not able to make the last meeting, which it's been a couple months since we got together, this would have been in late August. As a sort of update or reminder, the previous facilitator for this group was our community engagement coordinator, Kendra Norell, and she has since left our office, unfortunately, but has moved on to an exciting opportunity. So my name is Brianne Fisher, and I am going to be stepping into her shoes to try to facilitate this group and appreciate you all being willing to work with us as we move forward. So you have the link to the slides in the event invite for this meeting. If you'd like to follow along, we're also going to have a couple of points where we're going to be asking you for updates and input, and you're welcome to type into the slides themselves as always. But because City of Richmond staff, at least most of us, I think, are not able to use the chat feature on Microsoft Teams, wanted to provide some space here at the beginning on slide 2 for any questions you have. And because we're a small group and informal, please go ahead and unmute yourself if at any time with questions or thoughts.
Brianne, I
So,
think you need to be sharing a different screen.
am I sharing my email?
You're sharing me and Kate.
Oh, man, that was some like Matrix stuff,
I
huh?
know. I was like, oh, I don't want to
Oh,
see
that's
myself
weird.
that
I was
much.
on a statewide call and somebody did that, and then it went into that, and everybody's speakers went crazy. It was fantastic.
Oh, that's all right. Happy Friday. Okay, how's that? Thanks,
Better.
Don. Okay, here are the slides. So, welcome to the meeting. So today we're going to be talking about the RVAgreen 2050 plan deliverables, which is really exciting because y'all have been with us through this process for at least a year now, if not more. And we are reaching the point where we're ready to start bringing everything together into a plan document / website, which we'll talk about today. So we're going to start off as we normally do with our ground rules, and then we wanted to provide some time for your updates. So what have you been working on recently, just related to anything that we talk about in these meetings, generally equitable climate action resilience. We'll do a very quick overview of where we've been in our process, just as a reminder, again, since it's been a couple months now since we met. And then we're going to have 2 discussions / activities around the plan itself and getting your input on the format of the plan and the content for some of the context information. And I expect we'll be wrapping up early. Definitely won't take the full 2 hours, but want to provide the time if you all would like it, of course. But we've been finishing these meetings about an hour and 15 minutes or so, just as a heads up. So for today, our objectives are to provide an update on where we are in the process, and again, get your input and help with crafting some content and getting some formatting ideas for the plan itself. So here are our ground rules. As always, please let us know if you have any questions or ideas around these, but we've been over these many times, obviously. So let's start off with your updates. Anything you're interested in sharing here, you're welcome to unmute or type into these Post-it notes. We just wanted to provide some space at the beginning of our meeting instead of the end for you all to connect on what you're working on, any recent wins, challenges you're having, anything you'd like to share. So feel free to just jump in here. And Kate, I don't want to like call you out, but would love for you to share if you're willing.
Yeah, I'd love to. So we were able to win a USDA grant. So it's to fund a community compost pilot. We're calling the Richmond Compost Initiative. So Parks applied for it. We're partnering with Public Works and a number of other community partners. So we're going to establish like neighborhood-based drop-off sites for people's food scraps and bring them to a central site for composting. So this idea sort of began when I came into the role as community garden coordinator. We have a lot of interest and enthusiasm from neighbors to bring their compost to community gardens, but a lot of our gardens don't have that like resident passionate composter who like keeps everything chopped up and keeps the carbon inputs balanced. So you end up with like these heaps with like whole pumpkins and entire Christmas trees and no actual compost. So we actually applied last year and didn't get the funding, but got that feedback from the USDA and were able to strengthen our application. And it's really exciting because this go round we have Public Works support too. So it's really crucial because we're going to have some staffing help and some help with vehicles and things. So we're looking at about 13 sites to start with. We've got some community gardens. We've got 4 Richmond Public Libraries and some other community organizations who are going to host our bins. And so right now we've put in our ordinance to get the funds accepted. So hopefully like the beginning of the year, I can start spending money. But we've, laying out our plans for our central composting site. Went and checked out leaves with Public Works last week. So we've got our carbon inputs that we'll be getting from them. So yeah, we're just really thrilled to be like taking a step towards municipal composting, like helping to create that culture of composting in Richmond, to get people in that habit of, reducing their food waste. So anyway, we're stoked. And other things in my community garden world that I'm excited about is that we have started to form what we're calling a resource group. And so this idea came out of a number of other discussions with community garden leadership. We're sort of formalizing, a group to kind of lean into when there's decisions and vision that we want to share share those decisions with. So anyway, big things. It feels good to be here for like a year and a half and like things are really happening. So
Yes, things happening is so exciting. Thank you, Kate. That's great. And I saw Sarah's comment. She's got a candidate for one of those unhelpful compost areas, it sounds like.
Awesome. She should, reach out, Sarah. I would love to know.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll just say for the group's benefit, there's an obvious connection here to our waste working group. We talked about this initiative on that meeting yesterday, as well. So yeah, very exciting. Anybody else have updates or anything you want to share?
I've got something to share that I don't think I've brought to the group's attention before.
Yeah, go for it, Anya. Thanks.
Sure. So I've just been generally interested. I'm a citizen participant of this group, so not a member of any city department or anything like that. And something that I've been involved with since the spring of this year. So after my involvement with this group, but I'm letting it feed into one another, is if anybody's familiar with the term intentional community. So I am leading an effort among the alumni of a specialty center high school that I went to develop a residential community, and we are very much incorporating or planning to incorporate things, concepts from LEEDs and from, by that I mean the LEED requirements and permaculture and things of that nature. So anyway, that's how I'm kind of utilizing this and hopefully cross-pollinizing both of them.
That's awesome.
Projects.
Dee, are you able to share where that will be located? Is that in Richmond?
It is not in Richmond. It is going to be in North Carolina because that's where the high school was or is. And but we have been visiting existing intentional communities, and there's one in Manchester here in Richmond that we visited to get some ideas of how they're doing it. So there are communities who are very intentionally incorporating things to, put a strong foot forward in the help towards sustainability.
That's awesome. Well, if there's ever an opportunity that we can feature their work or anything like that, please keep us posted. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Anya. And it looks like that
Sure.
might be Bill typing another update. Oh, Bill said reach out to DIT about the chat.
Yeah, we've used it. I'm able to get to it, but I reach them and tell them you need it because you work with outside the city folks. So
Yeah.
So two things. Last year, the State Association for Emergency Management, chair for their legislative group, we got some of the language changed, the requiring emergency operations plans to make sure that they are applied equitably, account for vulnerable communities and minority communities, and that they're met during disasters. So while this isn't quite like that, it fits directly. What we hope to see from this long term is that to work towards the other side of the fence in regards to recovery. There's no mandate for any jurisdiction to have any kind of recovery plan. So we have a draft we're trying to pull together, and that's one of those things that we want to make sure gets focused on in there is this piece of it. The other thing is we kind of talked about in the beginning of the call. We've been trying to host calls with the state and with different city entities through the BRIC grant, which is Build Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. Just trying to make sure that folks know what's out there and available, as well as all the stuff that it takes to apply for those, as well as just trying to work with other community members on other projects that fit within that hazard mitigation stream.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. Anyone else want to share anything? All right. Well, feel free to come back to these slides and add any updates, links, things like that, whatever you'd like. And we are going to continue probably making this space available at the beginning of our meetings because it's really nice to hear what y'all are working on. So now let's go to the presentation portion. So again, just going to do a quick review on where we've been in our process and where we are today. So you've seen this timeline a number of times over the last, many meetings, but just as a reminder, right now we're here in our process on the plan development stage. We're at the end of that portion of the process. We're bringing together all of the input we've gathered from the larger community, from you all, the rest of the working groups, and the roundtable to actually start drafting the plan. So that's what we're going to start talking about today. And our team is going to be working on that over the next several months. We will be bringing a draft back to you all at our next meeting, which will be in February. We'll get your input as well as the roundtable's input and input from other city departments and leadership, and then take that draft out to the wider community for input in around Earth Day, so April to early May timeframe. After that, we will be compiling all that input again and making edits to the plan and bringing it to city leadership and the mayor's office for approval in hopefully late summer, and then seeking city council approval and adoption in late summer, early fall. So this is really exciting because the mayor announced this initiative back in 2017, and many of you have been along the ride over the years, especially this last year with this working group process. And we are getting to the point where we're ready to start doing things. So Kate, to your point, things are gonna be happening, which is really exciting. So you've seen this before as well. Just wanted to, show all the different components of the plan that we've talked about so far. Feel free to let us know if you have any thoughts on these components, but for today, we're going to be looking more high level. What we're doing right now internally is working on compiling and refining the content of the plan around the strategies and actions, the content for which you all provided a lot of input on in the, summer timeframe, those meetings. So these are details like, what exactly do we do next in order to implement a strategy? What's the time frame? What's the cost estimate? Who's the city steward responsible for implementation? All of those details. And we'll be coming back to you with all of that, with that draft plan that we'll aim to get to you for the February meeting. In addition, we're working on some of the other components of the plan right now related to what we talked about in our last meeting, which is measuring progress. So we will have, I'll just go to this next slide, but we have a set of 12 outcomes, which are across the entire plan. And these are the things that we want to make progress on with the implementation of RVAgreen 2050 as a whole. And for each of these outcomes, we talked about this at the last meeting, but we'll have a set of indicators, which are data points that we collect information on a regular basis, most likely annually or biannually or something like that, where we're still deciding that structure. We'll have a sort of traditional indicator for each outcome and an equity indicator for each outcome. So I'm trying to think of an example that would be most relevant to this group. I think one thing we're looking at for the outcome of engaged and involved community would be doing like an annual or some other regular interval community-wide sustainability survey. So we could measure people's awareness of, support for and priorities around sustainability and climate action and resilience and equity topics. And what we would be doing on the equity indicator would be disaggregating that data by things like race and ethnicity, so we can make sure that we're reaching the community, especially those underrepresented and often historically disadvantaged communities as well. So again, we're still working on refining all of that content, and we're really looking forward to bringing you all the draft at our next meeting. But I'll stop there and just check in if there are any questions on where we have been so far in the process before I talk about what's next. Hey, Javon, thanks for joining.
Good to see everyone.
All right, so I'll keep moving, but feel free to stop me again if you have any questions. So where we are going is the plan, which is really exciting. RVAgreen 2050 is going to be a thing that you can sort of touch and feel, although it'll be digital. So yes, Javon, I like your enthusiasm. So what will it actually be? It'll be a document, so likely a digital PDF. That's going to be sort of the traditional part of the plan. So it'll be long. It'll have lots of content on lots of things, but we want it to include information that is going to be helpful to us and to you all and the rest of our partners on implementing and making our community more equitable and resilient, and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So we'll talk about what's potentially going into that. And then there will also be an interactive website component. And the goal there is to have a more kind of user-friendly experience for people who, don't want to dive into a multi-100-page document, to be able to access the information about RVAgreen 2050, quickly get to information related to their priorities, and be able to get involved in the plan in the way that they would like, given their capacity. So what we're going to do today is get your input on sort of higher level, what all of that content can come together and look like. So we've been looking at what other cities have done with their climate action plans. In the email that I sent probably on Monday, I included a bunch of links to other cities' climate plans that we've been looking at for ideas and best practices. If you have a chance to look through any of those, and feel free to let us know if you like or dislike anything from those. We also consulted with our roundtable. This was at their last meeting about a month ago on these topics. And then this week, we're seeking the input from you all and the rest of our working groups on what will go into the RVAgreen 2050 plan. So starting at the high level, this is a lot of text, but this is the current thinking around the draft outline for that plan, the PDF document version. So I'll go through this in some detail and then stop for questions, but generally we'll start off with a letter from the mayor, some acknowledgements around all of the help that we've had along the way with developing this plan. We've seen examples from other cities where they do a land stewardship or land acknowledgement, and you all may be familiar with these, but we definitely want to acknowledge the sort of original inhabitants of this land that we are on, the Powhatan ancestors and tribal families, and how they stewarded the land. One idea that we got around this from one of the other working groups this week was to make this more of a general equity acknowledgement around land. So that could lead into, not just those native peoples, but also, what happened after that to get us to where we are today in Richmond. So, it hasn't always been pretty. There's been, obviously stealing of the land from those native peoples. There's been redlining. There's been other policies and things that have made our city look the way it does in terms of, who has been disinvested in and where we see repeating inequities. But I think that's important, given what we're trying to do with our process and the plan itself to center equity. So that was a lot on that, but just wanted to share my current thinking at least. And then the plan will
Thank you.
have, does someone?
No, I was just saying thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, James. So, um, uh, then we'll go into, and this, we've had a lot of feedback on the order of this, so we want to get your input too, obviously, but we will have some sort of section towards the beginning on like, okay, this is a massive document. How do you really get into this? Or, this is a big website. How do you get into this? So this will be definitions and acronyms, concepts and terms that people may not be familiar with, as well as a guide to the plan itself. So a key as to like what different symbols mean, what are, different sections mean, but also how to get into the plan depending on your capacity and your interest. So if you're looking for content relevant to a certain topic, go here or click here. If you're looking for how to get involved, or if you only have 10 minutes, check out these sections, something like that. And this was a really great idea from the roundtable that we're hoping to implement in both the document and the web deliverables. Then we'll have obviously some background and context information on like the actual planning process for RVAgreen 2050, where we are today in Richmond in terms of our greenhouse gas emissions, our climate impacts, the racial equity context. We have tons of data and maps and information that we'll be putting into that. And hopefully that kind of stuff will be helpful to us and to you all in implementation. If you're applying for a grant around a certain topic, you can just copy and paste, what we're putting into this, or take some of the data points, things like that. So then all the way down in the red text here is Richmond 2030. So this is the meat of the plan. We actually just earlier today sketched this out, which is really exciting, but this is going to be our, all the content we've been working with you all, the pathways, objectives, strategies, the actions, all of the components of the actions. So that'll be the really big piece of the plan itself. We'll also have an advocacy section around how people can get involved. So this, I anticipate or would like to include, not just how can you get involved in a particular strategy or how you can, be more sustainable or resilient at home or at work, but also maybe something around the community organizing aspect. So, hey, if you're reading this and you see something in there that you think, would be really helpful to your neighborhood now, how can you bring together a group of folks, and who are the right people to talk to get that implemented, in your neighborhood, something like that. And then we'll have a bunch of content that I'm hoping will be helpful for technical experts as well as future city planning processes. So this will be, all about our process and the lessons learned, technical methodologies, the climate vulnerability and risk assessment that we did with you all last winter, I think, or maybe early spring, and other information so that, one, we leave a more positive legacy for equitable planning in the city going forward, and that also anyone who wants to know anything about how we got to all of this stuff can find that information, and we're being really transparent with it. So that was a lot. I'll stop there and see if there are any questions on this, proposed outline, or thoughts on any of this content before we move into what the kind of meat of the plan in terms of the strategy content might look like? And sorry, I keep looking away, but I have my camera over here, which is weird. So I'm looking at you all now, but you're not looking at me. And we'll have more time to chat about this once we get through the next little section here. Good. All right. Well, we can always come back to this. So then the other piece of this that we wanted to show you all today is a draft mock-up of what this might look like in terms of the document itself and the kind of layout for it. So we will have the help of a professional graphic designer. So these mock-ups were actually done by our intern extraordinaire, David Sale, who was able to put this together as something we can react to. So just to say, this is not, finalized in any way in terms of the design. What we want to get your thoughts on, though, is how we can best communicate so much complex information in a way that people can, access and hopefully relate to and get involved with. So we have our 5 pathways, which are essentially the 5 working groups. And I'll show you some mock-ups from what we're envisioning for the community section. So each of those pathway sections will have some sort of beginning material that will describe, it'll have sort of like the tagline for that pathway. So for community, that's the content up at the top here. And then that beginning content will also list the objectives for that pathway. So under community, we have 2 objectives. And then for each objective, we will indicate which of our 12 outcomes, which I showed a couple slides ago, that objective supports. So again, these outcomes are across the entire plan. So we're hoping to show here, this community objective supports the outcomes of, cleaner air, advanced green economy, more resilient and cleaner transportation. I'm making all that up, but that's what we're hoping to show with some sort of symbology or text that can then be interactive on the website as well. And then under each objective, we'll list out the strategies within that objective. And then the actual strategies themselves, the sort of like most detailed content will be in one sort of page per strategy. For each strategy at the top here, this Latin text will have some sort of content, written content, as well as maybe data and maps to show why that strategy is important. So this is, for someone reading it who maybe doesn't know all of the technical details about what a strategy means, they can hopefully read that text and get some of that context and understand, okay, I know why, the community prioritized this. And this is the sort of baseline we're starting with here in Richmond in terms of, demographics or geographics or whatever it might be. And then we will list each action. So previously in our work with you all, we were breaking the strategies into subcomponents. We've just started calling the subcomponents actions because that's literally what they are. They're the actions we're going to be taking by 2030 in order to implement this plan. So just as an example, this particular strategy that we're using for an example around climate ready affordable housing only has one action for right now, but each action will be listed along with its status, which will be updated on an annual basis at least. It'll have a city steward. So our office is going to be continuing to champion and steward the overall implementation of RVAgreen 2050. But the city steward will be the key sort of implementer or partner department at the city that we'll be working with. Then we'll have a cost estimate for implementation and a time frame for implementation. So we're just splitting up the implementation time frame to 2030 into 2 chunks, near versus far. And then on the right there, we will have some sort of symbology to demonstrate the impacts of each action. So this is similar to what we showed you all. This would have been in April, but each action's relative impact on greenhouse gas emissions reduction, impact on climate resilience, and then equity, or our 7 community priorities. So, and then, before I move on to sort of our discussion, in addition to this, so this will all be the front matter, if you want to call it that, in the main section of the plan. And then as part of the appendices to the plan, we will also have additional detail on each action, which will include the next steps to implementing each action, financing information, and probably some other details there. So we're just putting everything that we've developed with you all out there so anyone can access it, and using that as part of our implementation plan. So that is where we are in terms of mocking up what this plan will look like. We want to take a few minutes, or 15, or however long you all would like to discuss your reactions to all of that. So the questions that we'd like to pose to you all is, of everything I just showed you, from the outline to the kind of draft mock-ups, what information is most important or relevant to you? So, once this thing is in a document, in your own work, what sections or what information would you find most helpful to, achieving the goals that we've talked about that are most relevant to your area of work? Is anything missing from what we've been talking about in terms of that information, or, other components in terms of the outline? And then also any ideas that you have on the format and design to best communicate this information, particularly because it's so complex and there is so much of it. We want to be conscious of that. And that is the aim of the interactive website, is to be a little bit more user friendly. But any ideas, examples you all have, please feel free to share them. So I will go back to this slide and just reference anything that you all will be helpful to your comments. But yeah, I'll just open it up for feedback and questions.
So just a quick thought, and I guess filling in the devil's advocate role, and it's probably just from getting sucked into politics on the legislative committee too much. But is there anything that we've looked at on this, like supporting the science behind climate change? Or I'm just thinking of, will we have like a small army of flat earthers telling us how wrong we are, or anything along those lines? Is it, I guess I'm just trying to think of a way to have that little section in there that kind of, we believe in climate change, and these are our planning assumptions that we've got.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was going to say, Bill, I was like, oh yeah, no, we have that around like the why now and the cost of action, but we really didn't back up to that more basic level of, like, at least in terms of what we were thinking here, of like, climate change is real.
Right.
we as humans are causing it, and this is why we need to do this plan. So I actually hadn't thought about that, so appreciate the comment.
And we do that with stuff and just call it like planning assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't come across as, hey, this is the fact. So you don't have to have the people that are, again, asking you to prove why the Earth is round or not. You don't have to engage that, because it has, hey, here's our guiding principles during the planning process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't think anybody that you had on here had any issues, concerns, or anything like that, but I just know that we do see that come up with stuff.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, yes, I know, from like surveying and all of that, the majority of the Richmond community understands that climate change is real and supports action to address it. I will say, though, there have been a couple times in my work over the last few years where I've had to talk to people about, or talk to people in a way that did not assume that was the case. So it's not like that's a small portion of the population, but we certainly want to be addressing that. So thanks, Bill.
I dropped into the chat some things that I appreciated from the outline, but more specifically from the kind of like the mock-up strategy things that I appreciate the most would definitely be the financial aspect and like when it's going to happen, because people, they want to see change. And so if you can't give me a timeline, it's very nebulous and it seems far away all the time. So I think that's a good aspect. I also really appreciated that we are utilizing our inner city partners. So like as city stewards. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Javon.
I think the document looks great. And I'm kind of zooming in here as I'm looking at it. I think that the more you can utilize infographics instead of text, the more kind of just visually accessible it is. Specifically thinking of like under the cost and the time columns, at least. I know to explain something, each individual activity or endeavor is going to require some amount of text. But the more you can utilize infographics and symbology for the rest, I think that's helpful, especially if someone just paging through. The thing that I don't recall you mentioning, but I find really important is what's the follow-up process going to look like? How can I, as a resident, 3, 5, 10 years from now, go to the website and find out how we're doing on the so-called countdown clock to 2050.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Anya. Good point. Let's see. And I realized, yes, we totally are. I am literally right now drafting the accountability framework around like reporting and updates and all that, but that we didn't put that in the outline. So we should put that in there somewhere. So thanks for the reminder, Anya.
Okay.
See, it's helpful to like take a step back. Other comments, questions, thoughts? Thanks, Sarah. I also really like the layout of each section and the outcome icons. Cool. Yes, data. We definitely data both in the document itself, but then also, our climate equity index. Someone had actually asked in a previous working group meeting about, updating that, making that data available. Yes to all of the above. So I'd love to have like links out to different things. So anyway, I have a lot of plans for this online tool that will include data that you all will be able to use for any purpose you'd like. All right, well, hearing no other thoughts, we will move on to our next section, but feel free to come back to this and reach out to me if you have any other questions or thoughts. And again, we'll be coming back to you all with the full draft in February, which is really exciting, and looking forward to getting your feedback then. So we've been talking about the draft plan content in terms of what it looks like, what it includes, and one of the sections that we've identified and actually, obviously just talked about is why is this all so important to do right now in terms of the time frame we're talking about? From now to 2030, we've outlined something like 50 strategies. We will have information in the plan as to how we got to those. But when it comes to implementation, there's going to be lots of priorities across the board for the city. And we need to bring people on board to let them know this is a priority and this is important. What happens if we don't do this? So we want to get your help with a hopefully fun activity in this area. So again, this is sort of looking at that adoption time frame and approval time frame that'll be next summer to early fall. We're also looking at content in the plan around why now and what's the cost of inaction. What if we don't do this? What's going to happen to our community, to our built assets and natural resources? And then around each strategy, we want to have this backup information so that people looking at this, we have 50 strategies, there's tons of content in this plan. Why is every single one so important to make sure that we implement, along the time frame of now to 2030. So what we're going to do, just as an activity, is pretend that we are speaking to the Richmond City Council. So if you have never spoken to City Council, this is what it looks like. You'd be standing at this little podium here, looking out at them. They now all have like glass or plexiglass boxes around them because of COVID. But you would be standing in front of them and you'd have 3 minutes. Yes, Bill, council shivers are real. So what we want to do is just pretend like council is, any decision maker, anyone you might be talking to. This could be this could be like my grumpy uncle at the Thanksgiving table who's like, what are you doing and why? This could be, the leader in your neighborhood association. This could be your city council person. Why are we trying to ask people to get involved and to help implement this now? We're going to take 3 minutes per objective. So we only have 2 for this group. 3 minutes is what you get when you speak to City Council. And we're just going to ask you to throw out your pitch. So why is this important, this objective, the strategies within it, and what's the cost of inaction if we don't do this? And we will be using this content to help take a step back as we write the plan so that we don't spend all of our time in the technical kind of jargon, but also make this relevant to anyone who's reading it. So the first objective that we have within the community pathway is around ensuring that historically disinvested communities that are most affected by climate change are centered in future processes relating to, these solutions that we're talking about and equitable communication and engagement strategies. So if you have access to the slides, I put in the specific strategies that are within this objective in the slide notes, so you can look at those. But just in case, I'll just go through them quickly. So this is guidelines for affordable housing, developing incentives for businesses, creating programs to help small businesses and homeowners and others navigate, city policies and programs related to climate, developing a climate impact grant to help grant program to help impacted communities become more resilient, developing a community benefits scorecard and agreement for their sort of equitable climate action and resilience potential, and then just furthering community partnerships around the implementation of all of these strategies that we're talking about. So lots of stuff in here, but we want to hear, what's your pitch? So I'm going to start the timer and hope this works. Yes, it does. And I got a little fall thing going on here because my other one didn't work. So let's hear it. Or type in the slide into the sticky notes. What's your pitch on this? I'm sorry if you can hear the noise from the Leaf video. I don't know. Mine's playing music for some reason. So you don't even have to go into these strategies if you don't want to. It could just be, hey, you've been, doing this RVAgreen 2050 thing for like a year. You've been on this working group. Why? Why is that?
So just real quick, are we assuming that this is kind of that they're already there at the table and I'm there to talk to people?
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't hear that question that was clarified.
I'm having, hold on.
I was asking to make sure that it was like we're selling our pitch to a room full of people already there, not trying to pitch them to come to the room to hear what we got to say.
Yes, yeah. So they're reading, the plan, and they're like, oh, this thing in here, like, oh no, I have this other thing I need to do. And you're like, wait, this is important because, the children, I don't, whatever you all think.
And I think kind of a simple way to think of this one especially is, if we don't ensure that the historically disinvested communities are involved in all these decision makings and plans, what's going to happen? What's the status quo that's going to continue and potentially get worse? Like just taking a step back, and what's your highest level argument to ensure that everyone understands and buys into this objective?
Thanks, Dawn. Okay, you've got 1 minute left, but we might give you more time since we had to talk through this one because it's a big one, like this is where, I'm presenting to a group of people and I say we have a budget of $100,000 and half of that is going to, the 8th and 9th district. I just think that, but what's the rationale behind that? Why are we focusing on these historically disadvantaged communities?
In the waste group, we had a couple of community advocates, get up on their soapbox. Like, this is your opportunity to just say it. Why is this important to you?
Can you hear the sound, Dawn? No. Okay, good, because it was really annoying. All right, I'll give you all another minute or so. Let's just talk through some of these things. So I'd love to hear, any thoughts you all have. I know we've talked about it a million times, but we've been kind of in the weeds on the specific strategies and stuff for a while. So want to get, any thoughts you have on how we can demonstrate the importance of all of this as we write the plan. Yeah, thanks to the anonymous elephant. I don't know that, it's very expensive if we don't address these issues, the cost of prevention versus the cost of the, I don't know, fix after, something happens.
And going back to Virginia Community Voices and the training we had last year, getting those voices involved in the decision making, kind of go back to that and revisit why that's so important.
Cool. Well, I'll let folks finish typing. We have one more, which is actually more related to resilience. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that one and we'll try this again. So this objective, same kind of thing, but this objective is focused on social resilience. So under this one, we have the strategies related to a community response fund, which will provide direct assistance to residents impacted by extreme weather events, which we know will continue to get worse with climate change. We have another strategy around paying community members for their time, which is really important. Building structures and capacity for organizational collaboration with partners around public health and businesses and other areas. And then establishing resilience hubs, so locations where people can go to get information, to seek services and assistance during climate hazardous events like cooling shelters. If you lose your power, you can charge your phone and access the internet, that sort of thing. So I'll start the timer again. And again, we're asking for, why is this all so important? What happens if we don't do this in the next 5 to 10 years? Yep. And go ahead and type any thoughts you have or shout them out and we'll record them.
Just real quickly too, from the social resilience, are we looking at ensuring that our community makeup stays the same?
What do you mean by a community makeup, I guess?
So a great example is, well, a sad example, Katrina, when the levees broke and that whole area was inundated, because of federal funds and things, guess where they put all the poor people back in? into those same areas that went in and flooded, because federal dollars wouldn't allow you to move a community. You had to kind of rebuild that community to what it was. That is, to me, not a good piece of social resilience. That's a we're putting people back in harm's way kind of thing. And it will change the way the makeup of the community versus the ability of the community to bounce back from a disaster, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think, yeah, of course, we wouldn't be going for that Katrina. I had to pause it because of the music on my end with this video. Yes, we'd be, I think with this, our strategies are aiming towards um, enhancing neighborhood resilience. So helping people where they are be more resilient. So that would be focused on that sort of prevention aspect so that when, we know that things are going to get worse in terms of storms, in terms of heat waves, all of that. Um, so let's focus on, helping the community be more resilient now so that once those things happen, we aren't faced with issues like that. But then also, I'm guessing we would probably be faced with some important decisions later on, especially related to flooding and things around, where it is probably not wise to put new development. Or if an area continues to flood over and over again, what can we do to either make that more resilient or restrict development in that area so that we aren't seeing, loss of life, health, and property. So I don't know if Bill, I have like a direct answer, but I think the strategies that we've been looking at so far are more aimed at the prevention aspect.
Yeah, no, that's good. I just, like I said, we deal with resilience a lot, and then usually it comes back to like hardening infrastructure or putting flood walls and things. And I just want to make sure I'm looking at the other aspect of it here. That's what makes Richmond Richmond, is the makeup of our city as well.
Yep. Right. And I'll add, we do have in our equity screening tool and our community priorities, we've identified things like gentrification and displacement as priorities. So those will be things we look at across the plan, not just resilience, but just where people are in the city, and if we want to stay, sure that our strategies are impacting their ability to do that. Yeah, thank you to whoever wrote the note about not limiting people with expendable income and time. I think that applies to climate change, not just the folks who can afford the electric vehicle or the solar panels on their roof. How can we get everyone involved? And so, yes, thank you. All right, you've got about a minute left. All right, you just got your 30-second warning. If you've ever spoken in front of city council, the clerk will look at you and say, you have 30 seconds remaining.
Then there's the part where you just keep talking over that.
Yeah, exactly. Sir, time's up. Awesome. Yes, resilience starts with you. All right. So time's up. Thank you, everybody, for playing along a little bit there. This is actually going to be really helpful to us, even though it may have seemed, silly or obvious at times. We always need to remember to take a step back and remember why we're doing all of this, especially as we prepare to get this thing adopted. So thanks to your efforts just now, adopted unanimously. Yay. All city council members approved. 9 votes yes. You got your objectives passed and we're ready to implement. So thank you all. That's all we have for today. Just a couple of wrap up items. So many of you filled out our community capacity survey or volunteer survey probably a couple months ago now. We're going to be reaching out to those who indicated that they have the capacity and interest in helping to do different steps of the development of this plan with us, whether that's like photography or content editing or graphic design, so many engagement, so many things. If you haven't yet, there's a link in the slide notes to that volunteer survey. Feel free to fill it out if you would like to check out the things that we're looking for help with. Our next meeting will be in February, so not scheduled yet, but we'll obviously reach out to you ahead of time with that date and also with the draft plan so we can get your feedback. So now we'll just take, a couple minutes if you all have any additional updates that you want to share, especially for anything that we can put into our December newsletter, which will be going out the week after Thanksgiving. Any reflections on the meeting and anything else that you'd like to share, feel free to also do our feedback survey. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and otherwise you are free to go and enjoy this hour back in your day.
Hey, I got one other quick question for you.
Go ahead.
Is there any internal city thing that's working towards this? I'm just thinking about like some of the calls that we pulled together, trying to see what we could do to get some of the BRIC grants and mitigation grants. So that there is something that maybe kind of crosses departments that can help kind of, hey, we have this that fits the plan. How can the city apply for grant funds that kind of fit that as well? So it's not just hey, it's all this one community piece, but that you guys are driving internally as well.
Yeah, great question. So right now, in terms of our process, the thing that's the closest thing to that is actually these working groups where we have city staff coming together as well as other partners and community members. Then our team, we participate on other city initiatives as well, where we interact with other departments. So this is like RVA H2O, the CIP and budgeting process. And then actually exactly what you just talked about is something that we are currently thinking about for implementation. So I'll just tell you an idea that I had as I was drafting this was we should have like a sustainability champion in each department, and our office can convene them at some regular interval. And they're sort of like the point people on, okay, we've got this initiative going on or this opportunity, and we can keep them updated. So hope that helps. And I'm thinking along those same lines.
Yeah, and like I said, I know we're redoing the city's emergency operation plan. And one of the pieces that's going to fall into that is kind of a small version of a recovery plan, like how we might structure our recovery. But we have a draft recovery plan that we started a few years ago that, again, just kind of died out just from people working on it. So that might be something else that we citywide should really look at trying to tie in is how we would bounce back, because there is a lot of things that we've seen, and just between us, it's like, hey, there's money we can't get as the city because we have to jump through all these hoops internally. And that could even mean, oh, hey, here's $2 million to rent that facility to be a community vaccination site. We couldn't accept the money because of the city processes. And it's like, that's crazy. So I'd love to see where we can get some more buy-in on that recovery side of it, so that we're looking at those things more holistically instead of the sheriff's department spent $70 and this is how much they're going to get back.
Yeah, and actually, Bill, so that's exactly the kind of thing, maybe higher level or bigger picture, I don't know. There's a couple of strategies, I think, in draft strategies in our buildings and energy section, I think around municipal assets, facilities, and operations, and doing a review of those related to climate resilience. So we're talking, theoretically longer term impacts, but we're already seeing those impacts now of like storms, heat waves, all of that stuff. And what are the vulnerabilities and risks and essentially options for recovery, but also increasing resilience. So I'd love to be part of that process if you do get it up and running again, or we can connect on that otherwise.
Well, I was going to say, once we kind of get through this, maybe it's something to revisit and look at and see how it fits based on, our Summer of Love last year and everything else in between. So, you know, there's definitely some crossover that I think, you know, for us, one of the things we struggle with, and this is not just the city, it's countrywide with emergency management, is we really are a program, not a department. You know, I think you guys kind of fit that too. And
Yeah.
it's very hard to get people to understand that, like, we try to do a lot without any authority to be able to do that, you know? So it's very, for us, we want to see some of those things that are going to make us stronger as a city with people that are like-minded trying to do some of the same things, because ultimately we want to make sure those communities are protected and Richmond can come back to what it was quicker. That's it. Businesses and everything.
Yeah, I have some more potential thoughts on that. So Bill, I might follow up with you related to.
Please do. And like I said, when we come back to look at it, I mean, we went through, I'll see if I can find the draft plan, but we held meetings and everything. We had an intern managing it, and then we had lost some staff at that point in time too. So it just kind of, it petered out, but it's there, and it's based off of another jurisdiction's plan, you know, borrowing best practices, not stealing. So we used chunks of their plan. We also have a regional plans as well that might benefit us from looking at, and, you know, Richmondizing for us, like family assistance centers and things like that. So
Awesome. Word of the day, Richmondizing.
hey, I make them up all the time. I did Digitable yesterday. So
Cool. Thanks, Bill. Any other updates? And yes, thanks, Javon. Keep us posted on your workshop. We would love to help. I would love to attend, but would love to help promote if that's appropriate, and just reach out. Otherwise, if we can help with anything.
And I just want to echo something that Bill was saying about like this coming together so we can proactively do things. I just thank you guys for doing this RVAgreen 2050. I think the waste conversations that you were having got Katrina and I linked up, right? Because even though we're in different working groups, through your office, you're able to make those connections. So I hope we can continue to, you know, get these sustainability champions, like the people who are really invested in making these moves in different agencies in the city, continuing to talk and plan and, you know, apply for funding together. So,
Yeah. Awesome. Making things happen.
hey, what was it? Planning to the apes, right? Apes stronger together. So the more we get together and go towards city council, the better off we are. So. So awesome. Yeah, let's catch up, because I definitely want to see something like that. And we can take a lot of what's been done through here to help incorporate in that to make it fit that. You know, I look to their examples like Tuscaloosa that was wiped out and went very green when they rebuilt. You know, so let's look at how we can have some of those ideas, because we're lucky. We're lucky in the city, and nobody in the city has really seen much damage since Gaston and Isabel. So we're due.
Anything else, everybody? Awesome. I'm going to stop the recording. Oh, Javon, go ahead. It looks like you unmuted.